Every man, woman, and child lives under a nuclear sword of Damocles, hanging by the slenderest of threads, capable of being cut at any moment by accident, or miscalculation, or by madness. The weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima.
With the atomic attack on Japan in 1945, the face of science was irrevocably changed. The blast yielded the power of 20,000 tons of TNT. Radioactive fallout and various burns killed or were inflicted upon over 100,000 Japanese. Everything was vaporized within 3 miles of the blast. This was an unconventional weapon to be feared, but it was the dawn of the atomic age, the era that would take hostage of the post-war superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Thus, the bomb that ended the Second World War began a much longer and frightening conflict known as the Cold War. America's autonomy and atomic weapons didn't last long. In 1949, the Soviet Union conducted its first atmospheric nuclear test in Kazakhstan. Over the course of 40 years, the site alone would be the location of 456 nuclear tests by the USSR. Nuclear weapons capability quickly spread. Britain carried out Operation Hurricane near the Montebello Islands in 1952. France exploded its first nuclear bomb in Sahara. Thermonuclear weapons were soon introduced. The hydrogen bomb was 450 times more powerful than the atomic bomb. There was talk of orbiting atomic weapons in space. As quickly as the arms race had begun, the atomic bomb unleashed scores of non-proliferation movements, particularly involving the scientists of the top-secret Manhattan Project in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Although they helped to build the first atomic bomb, many of these scientists were the first opponents of nuclear weapons. They had been the masterminds and the monsters. Several of these scientists helped to create the Pugwash conferences, which sought to bring together the international scientific and policy communities to work towards disarmament. At the dawn of the atomic age, the pressing need to resolve Cold War tensions and discuss the changing role of science in modern society motivated international scientists to convene at the Pugwash conferences of 1957, which successfully led to the signing of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1970. The political tensions and mutual distrust during the Cold War perpetuated and grew stronger under the threat of nuclear war and ideological differences between the East and the West. America adopted an aggressive anti-communist campaign. Senator Joseph McCarthy launched this witch hunt after the Soviets' first nuclear test. McCarthyism victimized even J. Robert Oppenheimer, who had been the leading scientist on the Manhattan Project. His objection to the creation of the H-bomb made it easy for his enemies to accuse him of being communist.
And the chief of police is hustled off to jail. Next, public utilities are seized by fifth colonists. Watch carefully what happens to an editor who operates under a free press. He goes to jail too, and his newspaper is confiscated. Exit freedom of thought. Yes, this is life under the Soviet form of government.
The Red Scare was easily manipulated by the US government. Using incredibly unsubtle propaganda to attack communism, the United States was able to gain support of the public during the war. School lessons, books, posters, and films depicting America as superior, America as a place where freedom was being encroached upon by communists, America as a country of ideal values, were ubiquitous. The mass hysteria was to empower patriotic citizens to rally to abolish communism once and for all. In Russia, America was portrayed as wasteful, racist, sexist, and cold imperialist. The USSR government often reminded its citizens of America's atrocities of overspending and consumerism. Soviet propaganda depended on displaying sheer military strength and superiority. Military parades and controlled media effectively created hostility towards America among the common people of the USSR. Several attempts at international arms control were made. Both the Berg Plan from the United States and the Gromyko Plan from the USSR were in the interest of their own countries, so they failed. Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace initiative wound up helping India and Pakistan gain nuclear capability, accompanied by nuclear weapons. America's determination to contain communism in Russia and surpass the Soviet Union in nuclear stockpiles were the major factors towards Cold War tensions. But as the danger of nuclear proliferation grew ever more dire, arms control would be impossible without cooperation from both sides of the Iron Curtain. In a world engaged in a titanic struggle between communism and anti-communism, a dangerous situation had arisen from scientific progress. The failure of the UN to agree on international arms control prompted scientists to take matters into their own hands. The birth of the atomic bomb had changed scientists from pure technocrats to citizens responsible for the social consequences of their work. They wanted to claim responsibility for their discoveries and express the importance of scientific insight in arms control. The Pugwash conferences were determined to create a forum for the discussion about these matters, with respect for facts. The discussion of whether or not scientists should take responsibility for their research had started prior to nuclear proliferation. In 1944, British physicist Joseph Radblatt left the Manhattan Project after he discovered Germany had abandoned their nuclear bomb project. Radblatt was then accused of being a Soviet spy. He was the first scientist to leave the Manhattan Project on moral grounds and would play a pivotal role in Pugwash in the following years. Organizations in the U.S. such as the Federation of American Scientists and the Association of Los Alamos Scientists fought to ensure peace in the nuclear age. However, what was needed was international consensus on how to approach nuclear arms control. There needed to be a channel of communication between scientists of the East and West in times when practical communication between leaders were uncommon. And with this, the idea for Pugwash was born. In 1955, Lord Russell Bertrand drafted the Russell-Einstein Manifesto. He envisioned fear of a nuclear attack comparable to the aftermath of Pearl Harbor and pressed for the need for a conference to discuss resolutions toward nuclear disarmament. Towards the end of the manifesto, he writes, "There lies before us, if we choose, continual progress in happiness, knowledge, and wisdom. Shall we instead choose death, because we cannot forget our quarrels? We appeal as human beings to human beings. Remember humanity, and forget the rest." When writing this, Russell sought the aid of the most eminent scientist of the time, Albert Einstein. After the attack on Japan, Einstein had worked unceasingly towards disarmament and reestablishing the name of science in the post-war world. When men are engaged in war and conquest, the tools of science become as dangerous as a razor in the hands of a child. The fate of mankind depends entirely on our sense of morality. Einstein signed the manifesto. It was his last public action, for he died in April of that year. This displayed Einstein's commitment to the cause of world peace. The manifesto was signed by 9 other scientists, notably Joseph Radblatt and communist Frederick Joliot Curie. It was received laudably at the World Scientists Conference in July 1955, and the first Pugwash Conference was finally held 2 years later. It was free of political motivation, as one was invited as a representative for oneself and one's ideas. The Pugwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs was born and continued to grow as it convened annually.